Monday, January 13th. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabulsi. It is the end of an era today in local politics. For the first time in decades, neither Duncan L. Hunter or his son Duncan D. Hunter are serving as a local representative in Congress. Today officially marked the younger Hunter's last day in office and an unceremonious ending to the political career. KPBS Priya Sridhar looks at what's ahead for him and for his district.
After 11 years as a representative, Duncan Hunter served his last day in office today. After claiming he was innocent, in early December, the congressman did a 180 and pleaded guilty to a federal charge of conspiracy for misusing campaign funds for personal use. In March, he'll be sentenced and faces 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. Governor Gavin Newsom decided not to hold a special election to fill the seat. That means the 50th will have no representation in Congress until January of 2021. His district chief of staff says the congressman's 13 office staffers will continue to work for the constituents of the 50th.
Whenever there's a vacancy with any congressional office, the office continues to operate to provide services to our constituents with help with federal agencies, for example, the VA, the IRS, passports, Social Security, a number of different things that we normally do.
Harrison says Hunter's staffers will report to the clerk of the House of Representatives.
The only thing that we cannot do is we cannot advocate for any policy. So we won't have any position on any of the policy issues that are debated in Washington, D.C. There's obviously no voting record or anything like that.
Republicans Brian Jones, Carl DeMaio, and Darrell Issa and Democrat Amar Campanajjar are all running for Congress. The general election will be held in November. Priya Sridhar, KPBS News.
It's a new week of tensions between the U.S. and Iran. Iranian leaders are designating the Pentagon a terrorist organization, blaming the U.S. for ramping up a conflict that led to Iran shooting down a commercial plane last week. Whitney Wild has our update from Washington.
The lead European aviation agency recommends commercial flights avoid flying above Iran, a sign they think the situation in the Middle East remains volatile after a Ukrainian plane was shot down last Wednesday. Families of the 176 victims are demanding change.
I hope as an outcome there will be some preventive measure put in place so this tragedy will never ever happen to another family ever again.
Over the weekend, Iranian officials admitted to downing the passenger jet, mistaking it for a cruise missile. Protesters in Iran took to the streets and denounced their government's actions, but some joined Iranian officials who blamed the U.S. for creating a warlike atmosphere.
I was dismayed that their first reaction was to blame it as American propaganda or some type of mechanical failure. I think they did the right thing by admitting it. Now they need to allow the investigators in and take responsibility.
Back in Washington, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo declined to testify at a hearing on the Hill this week focusing on Iran. Some lawmakers voiced skepticism that an Iranian threat against the United States was imminent.
I think that it was both the lack of transparency as well as the nature of the threat, that there wasn't consistent information.
President Donald Trump via Twitter reiterated his administration made the right decision. In Washington, Whitney Wild, KPBS News.
And a local university says it plans to honor a student killed in that downed Ukrainian airliner. As we reported Friday, 21-year-old Sarah Sadat, a first-year doctoral student in clinical psychology at the Alliance University, died along with her mother and 21-year-old sister. Today, the Scripps Ranch campus also made counselors available for grieving students and faculty. New developments could come this week on the impeachment of President Trump. The Senate is waiting to receive the formal articles from the House, and there's a lot of political strategy at play. More now from Athena Jones.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi signaling the wait is almost over, saying she's ready to send the articles of impeachment to the Senate this week.
I've always said I would send them over, so there shouldn't be any mystery to that. We have confidence in our case that it is impeachable, and this president is impeached for life.
Pelosi relaying a strong warning to her Republican colleagues, like Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who has backed a resolution to dismiss the charges against the president.
dismissing is a cover-up. If they want to go that route again, the senators who are thinking now about voting for witnesses or not, they will have to be accountable for not having a fair trial.
President Trump firing off a warning, too. Tweeting, many believe that by the Senate giving credence to a trial rather than an outright dismissal, it gives the partisan Democrat witch hunt credibility that it otherwise does not have. I agree. The White House has been prepared to start the Senate trial since before Christmas, one official says. CNN has learned White House counsel Pat Cipollone and Trump's outside counsel Jay Sekulow will likely represent the president. Senator Susan Collins has indicated she is working with some of her Republican colleagues to see if they can reach an agreement on calling witnesses in the Senate trial. Meanwhile, members of Trump's team struggling to defend why he says they decided to order a strike, killing Iran's top military leader.
I can reveal that I believe it would have been 4 embassies.
Defense Secretary Mark Esper even directly contradicting the president.
He didn't cite a specific piece of evidence. What he said is he believed.
Are you saying there wasn't one?
I didn't see one with regard to 4 embassies.
Later, Esper seemingly changing his story to CNN's Jake Tapper.
What the president said with regard to the 4 embassies is what I believe as well. He said he believed that they could have been targeting the embassies in the region.
National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien saying there was a threat without being too specific.
Everything the president has said is consistent with, and his interpretation is very consistent with the intelligence, which showed that Soleimani was plotting to kill Americans, soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and our diplomats. And so, we feel very good about it.
And that was Athena Jones reporting. Another senator has dropped out of the presidential race. New Jersey Democrat Cory Booker told supporters today he doesn't have the money to build a winning campaign. Booker also didn't qualify for tomorrow's Democratic debate in Iowa. Only 6 candidates will be on stage. That's Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, and Tom Steyer. The family of a crew member who died in last summer's boat fire off Santa Barbara is suing. 34 people were killed in the disaster. The new lawsuit claims the owners of the scuba boat knew it was unsafe and lacked the required smoke detectors and fire equipment. Truth Aquatics, the operators of the boat, are also suing to protect the owners from damages. The case is brought by the family of Allie Kurtz, the only crew member who was sleeping below deck along with passengers.
In this case, Truth Aquatics chose through their design of the vessel to have 2 means of egress that both led to the same place. And in this case, that same place was the galley where the fire began. The failure to have redundancy, different means to get out, gave the victims trapped below deck no way to get out of their bunks, no way to get free of this fire.
A woman from San Diego also died in the fire. Investigators have yet to announce an official cause. A moment of kindness and service ended up being the final act for an off-duty sheriff's detective in L.A. Amber Least was struck and killed Sunday morning in a neighborhood near North Hollywood. The L.A. County Sheriff says the detective was helping an older woman who had fallen while crossing the street. She was hit as she was walking back to her car. She leaves behind 2 sons, including one who is on active duty with the Navy.
And we always, with humor, joke about, helping the old lady across the street. Well, this cost our deputy her life while doing exactly that. And it's something that example she set, we want everyone to be able to emulate and hold her in high regard for that.
And List had been with the LA Sheriff's Department for 12 years. Police say the driver who hit the deputy stayed at the scene and tried to help. As of now, the case is simply being treated as an accident. The NAACP is suing the Census Bureau. In a case filed today, the civil rights group says preparations for the 2020 population count is understaffed. Locally, work is being done to encourage immigrants and refugees to take part. Speak City Heights reporter Ebony Monet has the story.
Hatem Motaseb reviews possible questions call center workers might get when manning a census phone bank, especially for refugees and immigrants.
How should I fill out the census?
For the refugee community, it's probably the first time
hearing about census or participating in census. So that requires a lot of work, and it requires building a hub.
Montecito is a regional organizer with Partnership for the Advancement of New Americans, or PANA, based in City Heights. He says there are obstacles to convincing refugees to complete the census.
Our community is dealing with trauma here in the U.S. with the Trump administration, and the weaponization of the citizenship question, for example, created a lot of fear in our community. So it made our job harder.
The phone bank is made up of more than 15 organizations. Workers are translating materials in more than 13 languages.
Hi, my name is Idil. I'm calling from a nonprofit called PANA, and we're just letting people know about the 2020 census. Are you planning on completing it?
I'm a community organizer with PANA. We're basically just calling our community members to ask if they're planning.
She just hung up on me.
It's the second day on the job for 17-year-old Amran Mohammed. She says hang-ups are part of the gig. Still, the native South African says she's proud to help other immigrants.
They're afraid that the people who has information is not trustworthy, and they'll come and maybe tear their family apart. We're here to make sure they live and prosper in America, and they can actually become a citizen.
PANA hopes to reach 14,000 immigrants via phone within the next 5 weeks to let them know how the census impacts their communities. Ebony Monet, KPBS News.
California is sending help to Puerto Rico as the U.S. territory tries to recover from a strong earthquake. The magnitude 6.4 quake struck last week. Last night, a team of disaster experts flew out of Sacramento to lend their expertise to the U.S. territory. The group specializes in emergency management and crisis counseling. One person died in last week's earthquake, and hundreds of buildings were damaged. And part of the recovery in Puerto Rico is mental. It's a place on edge after a series of natural disasters in recent years. Camila Bernal shows us how people are trying to get past this latest obstacle.
When Hilda Rodriguez heard the news of a 6.4 magnitude earthquake, she rushed from San Juan to the southwestern part of the island to help. It was in Guanica that she felt an aftershock.
I think that I felt like a tiny person.
Rodriguez is a psychologist helping children and families cope with the latest natural disasters in Puerto Rico. But she believes the trauma is piling up. The island has lived through hurricanes, political unrest, and now earthquakes.
Many people want to normalize the daily living and do some normal activities, but inside, absolutely, the people are so afraid, the people are so sad too.
And the mayor of Guanica is concerned.
The emotional health is completely broken, starting with the mayors.
He's thinking about people like Noelia de Jesus, who cannot return to her home. It's the third time a natural disaster in Puerto Rico leaves her without a place to live.
I've been crying ever since that happened.
She says she tries to hide her feelings, but knows that at some point that might not be possible.
I have it inside me. Maybe this day I wanna, I don't know, I could explode crying. This is something horrible. Everybody looks like they are zombies.
Rodriguez recommends talking, playing with the children, and using the resources available in the island. She's hopeful that they will once again overcome the hardship.
We are in a very, very resilient island.
In Guanica, Puerto Rico, I'm Camila Bernal reporting.
Parents know the challenges that come with juggling their jobs and their kids. KPBS education reporter Joe Hong tells us about 2 new local studies that reveal just how important it is for employers to provide support.
Hello. Parents like Jacqueline Gordonier have experienced firsthand what researchers have been saying for years. Daycare and preschool can better prepare students for academic and professional success.
The biggest benefit is that it adds a structure to their lives, and it's a practice that they learn now so that they have the structure as they continue to get into elementary school, high school, a job, college, all of that good stuff.
Gordonier is a single parent and police officer. She says when her children were first born, she really struggled to find stable childcare that could accommodate her hours.
I Googled every single facility I could. I was on babysitting apps, and
found every single resource I could with the department.
But a pair of new studies examine how local employers can help all parents in San Diego strike a balance. Stephanie Benvenuto is Vice President of Public Affairs at the San Diego Chamber Foundation. She says one of the reports found that 9 out of 10 employers in San Diego prioritize supporting working parents.
It provides us a really great opportunity and platform to start moving on educating the total business community around ways that they could support parents that are in their workforce.
The reports propose an array of solutions. Among them are using pre-tax dollars for childcare, lactation rooms, and more flexible schedules. Experts say the return on investment could be huge not just for students, but for the local economy. Laura Cohn is the Director of Early Workforce Development at the San Diego Workforce Partnership and the primary author of one of the reports.
Kids who've experienced high-quality childcare show that they're more likely to graduate from high school, more likely to earn a good living in later years, less likely to participate in criminal activity, less likely to use public benefits like welfare or food stamps.
Joe Hong, KPBS News.
And as we saw from that last story, many people do what they can to make ends meet, and that includes taking out short-term loans. Cal Matters reporter Ben Christopher takes a look at a new law for 2020 that aims to protect borrowers.
Starting January 1st, lenders who make small to medium-sized loans in California have to keep interest rates under 36%. Over the last decade, there's been a kind of financial gold rush into the high-cost, small-dollar loan market. Companies lend to borrowers who tend to be ignored by traditional banks, and they've profited by charging high interest and fees on these loans. But that's changing in California.
Predatory lending has been an issue in our state.
A new law by Assemblywoman Monique Limon is cracking down on these high-cost loans. Limon and consumer advocates say loans like these exploit people's desperation and set them up to fail, often wrecking their credit and trapping them in poverty. Lenders say that when interest rates are capped at 36%, they won't be able to afford to lend to many low-income Californians. It will just be too risky. And if they go away, they argue, borrowers will just find other ways to get money, which might be even worse.
What happened, Steve? The money man.
So who's right? California is at the center of an economic experiment to find out, and it starts on January 1st.
And Cal Matters has more on the new laws for California in 2020. You can find their stories at calmatters.org. Clear weather this week, but it's going to be cold at night with lows in the 30s in some areas. Chris Nallen has our forecast.
And once again, we're talking about the weather here. Pretty nice all across Southern California. So quiet for now. The active weather pattern, though, to the north, we're keeping a close eye on that because eventually that weather does make it down towards Southern Cali. Rain chances will be ramping up later into the week. All right. Looking at that satellite radar, notice again just some clouds around the area, but that's about it. Further north, that's where all the weather remains to be concentrated, especially along the I-5 around Oregon and back into Washington with snow expected. So expect some travel delays to the north and west. Back to the south we go tonight. Well, here we are around, say, Chula Vista falling back into the mid-40s, San Diego downtown right around 47, and Mount Laguna falling back into the middle 30s. Now, for your Tuesday, we have this high pressure across the four corners sending in some very nice conditions. The rain across Northern California, but we'll talk about another nice day for your Tuesday. Temps will be into the mid and upper 60s, especially further inland you go. But Mount Laguna, you'll be cooler into the 50s there. Chula Vista, right around 63. Now, future forecast keeps us very dry into the next couple of days. But notice here, clouds start to really increase Thursday, and then some rain to the north near LA, eventually coming down to our area by, say, late night after sundown. So along the coast, do expect conditions to be pretty comfortable. Some patchy fog early on your Wednesday. Turning cloudy, though, throughout the day Thursday. Temperatures in the low 60s. Inland spots will see a mix of sun and clouds here for Tuesday into Wednesday. Turning more cloudy, though, as that weather turns a little bit more unsettled heading into Thursday. Upper 50s, but then it's a short-lived setup because the sunshine returns for Friday. We'll see lots of sun with temps into the low 60s. Mountain region, well, do expect temps to be cooler, especially by the end of the week. Notice those numbers. We go from the low 50s to some low 40s, overnight lows below freezing. As for the desert, nice and toasty. Well, at least relatively speaking, temps will be into the upper 60s by Wednesday, and then a bit more cloudy as we head into the end of the week. Reporting for KPBS, I'm meteorologist Chris Nallen.
This week brings tough memories for people who live along the central California coast. A deadly mud flow swept through the town of Montecito in 2018. Reporter John Palmentieri shows us how the community is rebounding 2 years later.
The trickle of water in San Ysidro Creek this week is a complete turnaround from the massive mud flow and runoff that gushed through here 2 years ago. Those who were here then tell me they will never forget these images and the loss of 23 people along with homes, businesses, cars, bridges, and a one-of-a-kind environment.
It was intense, but I definitely would say that it made me stronger.
It was like nothing else they had ever experienced. A massive fire followed by a violent rainstorm on steep hills near a populated area.
I was evacuated from my house in total from the fires and the mudslides for probably a month and a half to 2 months.
On the second anniversary, flowers have been brought back to areas like the Montecito Creek where many lives were lost in the rushing waters. Notes have been left, and for many people this is a quiet, somber spot on the roadway once a disaster zone. Nearby an olive mill in Hot Springs, 2 bouquets have been wedged in the fence. There are still 2 children that were never found in this disaster. It is a sign the community has never forgotten.
Oh, absolutely. And still live very much with a sense of their presence.
But the community has also come back in ways that were hard to envision during the disaster.
I'm just sorry that some people have still empty lots, but they did a beautiful job with those streets. I mean, the workers here are fantastic.
After the mud flow badly damaged North Jameson Lane, federal funds came in to create walking trails like this. It connects families to their nearby neighborhoods and also provides a safe passage for children walking to schools.
The community as a whole, like everybody stepped up. We all got together and everybody was so supportive, so loving.
We spent seven years in Michigan. People really look after each other. That's the spirit of Santa Barbara, and we've seen the best of people come out.
Looking at the recovery of homes and open space after the destruction, it's been called
extraordinary from all aspects. Because of all the rain, there's so much growth. A lot has filled in.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, backlash in Iran. Massive protests are met with violence following the admission that Iran's military shot down a passenger jet. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Major punishment today for one of the best teams in baseball. The Houston Astros have fired their manager and general manager over a cheating scandal. Major League Baseball announced suspensions this morning, and that's when the team's owner decided to cut ties. The commissioner says manager A.J. Hinch knew about the team's sign-stealing system starting in 2017 when they won the World Series. The Astros will also be fined $5 million. The stage is set for the biggest night in Hollywood. Oscar nominations were announced early this morning, and there's a lot of talk about who made the cut and who did not. Here's KPBS Cinema Junkie Beth Accomando.
The 2020 Oscar nominations are out, and the big winner is the DC Comics-inspired The Joker with 11 nominations. In a year where the Academy barely survived another Oscar so white hashtag, The Joker seems to be its way of heaping praise on a white male-centric cast and crew under the guise of being edgy, artsy, and populist. Trailing The Joker with 10 nominations each are Martin Scorsese's aging mobster tale The Irishman, Quentin Tarantino's Valentine to the Movies, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Sam Mendes' digital one-shot World War I drama, 1917. As for diversity, Antonio Banderas represents Latinos in the acting field with his Best Actor nomination for Pain and Glory, while Cynthia Erivo is the only Black performer with her Best Actress nod for Harriet. Although Bong Joon-ho's Parasite has been collecting armloads of nominations and awards from critics, it only nabbed 6 Oscar nominations. But it did make Academy history by being South Korea's first film to win a nomination for both Best Picture and Best International Feature Film. Although women directors like Lulu Wang and Greta Gerwig have been acknowledged with Best Directing nominations elsewhere, they, along with all the other female directors, were shut out of the Best Director category this year, which remained an all-boys club. The online streaming service Netflix, with its productions of The Irishman and Marriage Story, scored big with 24 nominations, beating out any other Hollywood studio. But the big takeaway for me about the 2020 Oscars is just how bland the bulk of the nominations are. Even the nominations that imply diversity, like Harriet and Little Women, are films that are relatively safe and predictable compared to the more daring and exciting films that were overlooked this year, such as Uncut Gems, The Souvenir, Waves, The Last Black Man in San Francisco, and Dolomite Is My Name. Films like Parasite, that push artistic conventions and genre boundaries, are the exception that prove the rule. But playing it safe is usually what the Oscars are all about. Occasionally they can surprise you, but these are industry awards given mostly by people to their friends. Just think about the awards your workplace would give out and think about who would win. Then maybe you'll understand why the Academy Awards can feel so frustrating to outsiders. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And today is Korean American Day, and the U.S. is celebrating its first Korean American astronaut. He's also a USD Torero. Johnny Kim is part of the new Artemis team for NASA, which will include missions to the moon and possibly Mars. Kim is a former Navy SEAL and a doctor. He earned a degree in math at USD. And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. The Republican plan for the March primary. On Morning Edition, the local party chair talks about his priorities as the election draws near. And on Midday Edition, expanding the San Diego airport. What is next for this major project now that it's cleared a major hurdle? And as always, you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great evening.